Come in. So. Okay. Yeah.
Does it matter what color it is? Oh, you that you can have that.
Ms. McCluster, are you ready?
Yes,
ready?
sir.
Everybody good? Good evening. I'd like to call the order of the Pennsylvania County Board of Supervisors work session on Tuesday, December the 17th, 2024 at 3:30 p.m. at Board Meeting Room at 39 Bank Street, Southeast, Chatham, Virginia. Ms. McCluster, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Bowman?
Here.
Mr. Dudley?
Present.
Mr. Height?
Here.
Mr. Ingram?
Here.
Mr. Whittle?
Here.
Mr. Tucker?
Here.
Mr. Dalton?
Here. Moving to item 3. Are there any items to be added to the agenda?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I have one, please.
All right.
Make a motion to add the following economic development closed session to the agenda. Discussion concerning a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community. Under legal authority, Virginia Code 2.2-3711A5. That is my motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. We got a motion. A second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Tucker. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. We ready to vote?
Was that 8A? Is that correct?
It passed, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Moving to item 4, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Ingram, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bowman. Any further discussion? Not hearing any, we're ready to vote.
It passed.
All right, thank you. For the citizens' convenience, all work sessions and committee meetings are now being recorded and can be viewed on the county's Facebook as the same YouTube located at the Board of Supervisors business meeting. Please remember that the board's work session is designed for internal board and county staff communications, discussion, and work. It is not a question and answer session with the audience. Accordingly, during the work sessions, no questions or comments from the audience will be entertained. Respectfully, any outburst or disorderly conduct from the audience will not be tolerated and may result in the offending person removal from the work session. As a reminder, all county citizens and other appropriate parties are designated by the board's bylaws are permitted to making comments under the hearing of the citizens sections of tonight's business meeting. Moving to 5A, presentations, we have a 5A 2024 Comprehensive Annual Finance Report. Ms. Vanderhyde.
Yes, I'm pleased that Scott Wickham is here with Robinson Farmer Cox. They performed our audit for FY 2024, and he has a presentation for you all, and you should have gotten a copy of that as well as a copy of the report itself. And the presentation will also go along on the screen as he goes through it. And I'm going to have him come on up now.
All right. Thank you. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Again, my name is Scott Wickham. I'm partner in charge of the county's audit, here to go over the results. Recently issued report based on fiscal year June 30th, 2024. So I've got a little handout with the presentation. It'll mirror the online exhibit, and then I will refer to a few pages in the very thick report as well as we move through. The overview of the audit results and explanation of financial statements. Throughout the report, we issued several opinions and reports. The first of being on page 2, I believe, starting on page 2, which is the independent auditor's report. This report speaks to the numbers in the report. Again, the county has received an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can get. That means the numbers presented in the report are materially accurate. So it's a credit to the staff of having accurate financial statements for us to use in this report here. Again, that's unmodified, clean report there. Due to the structure of governmental financial statements, it's quite challenging to have a lot of comparative data. So one section that does have some of that comparative data is the management discussion and analysis. And Kim and the finance group has done a good job of writing this section of management discussion and analysis that has comparative data, also has some high-level summary information. So if you're only going to read part of this report, that's a great section to read. The report is up to 174 pages, so it is rather lengthy, but that's a good summary, that section there. Exhibit 1 on page 17, and again, I'm in the full thick report here, going through some highlights here. Exhibit 1 is the statement of net position, and so that's your balance sheet, if you will, for the county as a whole, including the governmental activities and the business type activities, which includes the water fund and the solid waste fund. You can see the school board column there and the IDA column as well for component units. Across the bottom, you have net position, so that's essentially net worth if you were a business. And in that, several categories including net investment and capital assets. Those are net position that you really don't have to use. That is infrastructure in the ground, that's the buildings that you have, those are the vehicles you have, all of that net of the debt to acquire those items. Then you have restricted net position that's restricted by a grant or the Code of Virginia. You can see those sections there as well. And then unrestricted that you have available to you. As you see, the governmental activities have about $65 million unrestricted, and the business type has a negative 1.4. That is related to the landfill closure requirements that are required by DEQ and not necessarily unusual. You'll see the school board has a negative $55 million amount there. I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail, but that's related mostly to the allocated teacher net pension liability. Very common for school districts in Virginia. All right, moving to Exhibit 3 on page 19. This is the balance sheet again, but this is a much more zoomed in, focused on the general government financial statements. This is on the modified accrual basis of accounting. So this is short term. You have cash activity, cash on hand, plus short-term receivables, less short-term payables. So this does not include big picture long-term debt. But again, you do have fund balance, which is essentially the net worth of these funds, and then the various categories that you all have assigned them to or are restricted by grants. Across the bottom, you see unassigned fund balance in the general fund of about $46 million. I mentioned a couple times the business type funds. We move over to page 25, Exhibit 9. When you're reviewing the solid waste fund and the waste and water and sewer fund, I think that the statement of cash flows is a good exhibit to look at. It breaks down into several categories. The first section on the top being cash flows from operating activities. As you can see there, both the solid waste fund and the water and sewer fund were in the positive in their operation status. So generated about $2 million in operations for solid waste, about $400,000 for water and sewer. The next section down below that is cash flows from capital related activities. So you can see you use those funds from operations to reinvest back into those plants with capital improvements and debt payments for an overall decrease in cash in those funds. But you can see that breaks out into those categories. And then in the middle you can see the change in cash for a combined decrease in cash of about $1.5 million there. All right, I'm going on a high level in this detailed report, so I'll move all the way to the back, some other reports that we issued that are on page 165. On page 165, we have the gas report. The gas report speaks to compliance with government auditing standards and state specifications. This year there are no items reported. It's a clean report. All of our testing came back clean and really good. So good job to all the staff of the county and school board and social services for getting that done clean. On page 167 through 169, this is the third report that we issue in our overall audit report. This is the report on uniform guidance, which is your federal testing. Again, also a clean report no findings noted. So good, clean report there. Overall, no findings noted in the report. As I mentioned, your federal funds on page 170 through 172, that does detail the total federal funds that you all had during the year. Quite a few this year. The school board did wrap up a lot of their ESSER ARPA funds, so that will probably bring that number down a little bit going forward. But again, no findings, so good, clean report there. As I mentioned, no findings. We also usually issue an audit recommendation letter. That's for items that are non-material, non-compliance, best practices type items. A couple items we noted there included making sure that the conflict of interest forms that the board, like you all, and other boards within the county fill out, making sure that all those questions are completed accurately. I know one page there's a question at the top, or a instruction at the top that says, do not complete if you're completing this as a local board member, except for. And so sometimes that except for gets missed and that whole page is skipped, but the third question on that page is applicable, and I see that pretty constantly, a lot of localities where that question is skipped. So want to make sure those are completely filled out because those are public record. Making sure that the jail co-payments for the inmates are filed on time. You know, if they have a doctor's visit, want to make sure that that's posted to their records on time. Reconciling in social services office, there's a lot of pieces that go into that. We want to make sure that we're reconciling actual expenditures in their office to what's being received in the state system to make sure that you all are receiving 100% of the dollars you can get and not over-claiming also. We want to make sure it is accurate. So really close, really small dollar amounts, but want to make sure that's working properly. And the special welfare, want to make sure those accounts are reconciled and reimbursed timely as well. So all very small dollar amounts, but a couple minor things I want to point out and get tidied up as well. So, but overall, really good report for a county this size to have those few recommendations. It's really impressive. So that's good. All right, some trend information to see where you all are headed or have been and maybe headed. On page, let's see the handout again, moving back to the small handout. We have 5-year trend information on the government-wide financial statements. Government-wide, again, includes big pictures, so that includes your long-term debt and everything. Towards the bottom of that, you can see that the current ratio, the county is over 5 again this year, so pretty strong position on that full accrual county. You may see a significant increase in the restricted portion there in net investment, net position. A lot of that is related to the increased local sales tax that's restricted for the schools.
Okay.
Zooming in more to the general fund, you can see a 5-year trend here on the general fund revenues on the next page. You can see property taxes have increased about 5% per year over the 5 years. Other local taxes, I don't have the percentage there, but significant increase again from 23 to 24, mostly due to the increase in sales tax as well. Across the bottom there, you'll see total revenues have grown about 7% per year over those 5 years. Looking at the expenditure side, you can see that total operating expenditures have grown just under 7%, so it is good that revenues are outpacing expenditures. The first number that jumps out when you look at this is the general government administration increase about 17% per year. I want to point out there's kind of a unusual item in 23 and 24 that does include your reassessment, which is a pretty big expense that kind of skews that percentage a little bit for that. So there are other increases and personnel increases as well as IT investment increases, but part of that is the reassessment that looks significant there. The next page has some pie charts, kind of compare where your revenues are coming from prior year to this year. You can see pretty comparable numbers percentage-wise of where the funds are originating. Similar note on the expenditure side, a good portion about 32% of the county's funds have gone for public safety, about 19% for education, 18% for general government administration. We also like to look at the county's reserves and make sure that you're in a pretty good financial position at the end of the year. We do that looking at the general fund primarily. And so this slide gives you some information on where you all stand there. The unassigned fund balance I mentioned previously, about $46 million. That is really what you have available, and that's really your reserves, essentially,
Yes.
as of June 30th. We look at that as a percentage of expenditures usually. It's about 23%, so you can see a little bit of an increase there, a little increase in unassigned fund balance from the prior year, increasing about 5.5% per year over the 5 years. GFOA is a national organization that has some fund balance policies. Their general recommendation is a minimum of 2 months, which is just at 17% or so. But that is a minimum and doesn't take into account specific factors. So each locality would need to evaluate their own to make sure that based on their tax base, what they feel is appropriate. Also, those localities like you all that have twice-year collections, you would have a higher percentage because you collect half your taxes in June. So right towards the end of the year, you've received half your taxes. So that would make sense to be a little higher there. Also, as you develop a capital plan, if you have items that you're kind of thinking about, the capital project, but it's not actually funded in the capital project fund, those kinds of things. So as you look at that number, also think about those things as well. But it is good to be above that number that GFOA recommends. We also want to look at your debt balances to make sure you're in line with what we see here. I always want to point out that this debt includes more than just your bonded debt. You have your schedule of payments you're required to pay for your bonds. This also includes your accounting debt. So your sick leave and your pension liabilities and things that are given to you that are not just, this is the schedule of payments, but this is your full accounting debt. The APA provides a debt per capita, and it includes all those items as well. So to compare apples to apples, we have all of them here as well. As you can see, the overall debt has come down from the prior year, come down considerably over the 5 years. So it's a good job of paying down the debt balances that you have. Well below the state average debt per capita. I mentioned we do have that from the Auditor of Public Accounts. It is 1 year behind. So the number I reported there for 2024 is actually 2023. So that's why it's the same number. But you are well below, so that's a good spot to be. One big number on that report is the net pension liability. You can see for the county, it's just under $8 million. And for the school, it's just under $53 million. So those are very significant liabilities that, as I mentioned, are not any of your fault. You all have paid what VRS tells you to pay. It's a difference between the actuaries and the state legislature saying, well, let's give everybody a break and not pay what the actuaries say needs to be paid to fund it. So the bill they send you is less than what it should have probably been. Or a difference in the investments not doing what they expected them to do as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces into that, and that will generate the liability over time. So that is nothing of the county or the school board's fault. That is an allocation and an impact of those variables. To move on with this net pension liability, I keep talking about it because it is so significant. It's a big estimate. It's a liability in your financial statements. And on this slide here, you can see the sensitivity analysis of that liability. It's reported in the middle column based on what VRS recommends and their actuaries recommend. But you can see the difference if they earn 1% more better. So if they earn almost 8% on their investments, you have an asset in a few of them, so they're overfunded. And the school boards comes down to $19 million. So it's very sensitive to what the stock market does. That's the reason I want to point that out, that's reported appropriately, but it is a big estimate. So. Other big estimates you all have include useful lives of assets, which is based on historical data. The landfill is based on the estimated useful life of the landfill, and things like that from engineering information. This year, we did implement one new standard. You did implement Statement 100 for corrections. That's just a minor standard that changed the way you report any kind of restatements in the report. In previous years, we implemented GASB 87 for leases and GASB 96 for subscription IT arrangements. Both of those statements were more significant than 100, but a lot of statements have been put in play here recently. This coming year, Statement 101 for compensated absences will go into play. We expect that to increase that liability for compensated absences for sick leave for most localities across the state. Currently, the liability is calculated as if for what you get paid. So if you retire and you get a payout for your sick leave, that's the liability. This new standard will also count if you are using that time and not just a paycheck. So it will increase most. It will not impact your day-to-day operations or anything, but it would increase your liabilities in future reports. Statement 102 will probably change disclosures a little bit, but won't have a super significant impact on your report. Statement 103, financial reporting. When this model was first talked about, the thought process was to completely revamp the entire report and change all of it to make the business type and the government activities a lot easier and more comparable and simplified for everyone to read. As they got into this, no one could agree on anything, and it kind of dwindled out. Then COVID hit, and they kind of backed off the process a little bit. There are some significant changes in this, but not the sweeping changes they were hoping to make. The biggest changes, you currently report an original budget and a final budget and an actual on some of your exhibits. It will also include another column in there for the changes in the budget. It also will detail those changes. So all of these additional appropriations and transfers and things that you all are making will be reported in the report once that goes into play. So additional information there. Overall, not as sweeping and groundbreaking as they initially planned, but that will take some time to get all that together. So overall, the audit process went really well. All of the staff members did a great job of getting us information in a timely manner. We start the audit in April or so and send a request through a secure portal. All the files are sent to us ahead of time. We review them. Then we come on site and review additional items. And then a similar process in the fall to wrap up. And so it takes a lot of effort for everyone involved to get it done, and really went really well, and y'all are in pretty good shape financially. So with that, are there any questions?
Any
Mr.
questions,
Chairman.
gentlemen? Mr. Tucker.
Not really a question. Thank you, sir, for the presentation, but I just want to salute and applaud Ms. Vanderhyde and her team for an excellent job in terms of their financial stewardship. So thank you so much for all that you and your team do to keep us in the black.
All right, Mr. Dudley.
Yes, sir. Appreciate what you've done. It's a good report. Looks like our county's Kim's doing okay. But it takes more than just one. It takes the old saying takes a tribe, so it takes everybody pitching in. But I want to thank our staff as well. They do a wonderful job. Thank you too. Thank you also do it for the town of Hurt, and I just appreciate all your work as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dudley. Any further comments? Mr. Ingram?
Scott, thank you for your report. It's good to see you again, always when you bring us good news. So we've been doing pretty good. We're not destitute by any stretch of the imagination, are we?
That's correct. You're in pretty good shape, yes.
All right, so when the tax rate comes down from 62 to 56 cents, now your CPA, is that an increase or decrease?
It's a decrease on the rate. The assessment can impact the
Okay.
actual dollars.
And it obviously did.
Correct.
But as far as this board, we decreased the tax rate. We didn't increase nobody's taxes, correct?
It would depend on the way the question's ordered. It would depend on how the bill is calculated. But yes, you did decrease the rate.
Thank you, sir. Have a good Christmas.
Any further questions? Mr. Bowman?
Thank you. We always look forward to this report with a little bit of anxiety, but I had no doubt that Kim could pull this thing off because she stayed on top of the budget each year, and she's able to make sure that we stay in line when it comes to spending. And I'm always a stickler for the fund balance to make sure that we have what we need in there. Unfortunately, we have to go there sometimes to make ends meet. but this has been very good, and I appreciate the work that you put in. Kim, I appreciate everything that you've done, and the staff in finance, and the department heads, because every time that we start doing our budget, it means, keeping the department budgets within line in order to make sure we don't overextend. So, good job there, Kim, very good. Pass it on to your staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Any further comments, gentlemen? I'd like to say thank you too, Scott, for everything you've done, and Kim, all the team, every department here throughout the county. We want to thank everyone. Any more? Not? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you all.
Good presentation.
It was a long report, so my contact's on the front of that handout if you have other questions as you go through it.
Okay.
Otherwise, thank you all. Happy
All right,
holidays.
thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, we're moving to item 5B. We got Parks and Rec Master Plan. Mr. Price. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Supervisors. As you know, the last year or so, we've been working on our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Today, we have with us James Mickle from Barry Dunn. He's going to present on the draft of our master plan, and I'm going to invite him up. And then afterwards, if you have any questions for Mr. Mickle or myself, feel free. All right?
All right, thank you, sir. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Good evening, Board and County Administrator.
Could you pull your mic up? There you go. Thank you, sir.
It's not easy being 6'5". Again, my name is James Mickle, and I'm a manager with Barry Dunn, the firm that's had the pleasure of partnering with the county to complete their update to their Parks and Recreation Master Plan. A Parks and Recreation Master Plan is a 10-year plan that provides a roadmap and an overarching systems plan of operations and programs and services for possible enhancements for the future. So I have a very short agenda today, and a little while ago we passed out what you have in front of you, which is a formatted master plan for Parks and Recreation. So I'm here today to provide some highlights of the process, some of our recommendations and key findings, but also provide you with the opportunity to look at this for the next 30 days and provide the opportunity for it to possibly be adopted in January.
We do have the presentation in their packet.
Okay. So I may almost be able to do this by memory, so I'll give it a go and after the gaps in the project. So in terms of engagement findings, we learned early in the process that engaging the community externally and engaging staff and stakeholders like yourself internally would be a key analysis in determining what the gaps were for the Parks and Recreation system. With the help of Diana and Justin, we had a very robust engagement, engaging over 1,200 members of the county, to include going into all the middle and high schools. We held several focus groups. We had what we call listening sessions, where I think I have a few familiar faces here, that opportunity to interview you and really get an appetite of what your current community desire of the Parks and Recreation plan. We like to look at demographics, but we also like to know the who and the what. Who the county are working to engage, but what they desire, what they want. So we had over 262 stakeholder interviews. We had many focus groups of over 200 people. And something that's really impressive, we had 343 surveys completed for the statistically valid survey. When you get to 300 is when that survey has a plus minus accuracy of over 96%. So it's really impressive that we were able to get something like that out in the county, and this was a random invite that we got those back. That doesn't always happen when we go through these processes. And in some situations, we have agencies that we engage of over 100,000 residents, we don't get 343 back. So it sort of shows the value that Parks and Recreation could provide to the community here in the county. So for this process, in doing an implementation workshop, we decided on 4 key strategic areas: organizational efficiencies, program and service delivery, facilities, parks, and service delivery, as well as financial accountability. For organizational efficiencies, the goal is to pursue organizational excellence, program and service delivery, enhance recreation opportunities for individuals of all ages and abilities, facilities, parks, and service delivery. Perfect. Facilities, parks, and service delivery, commit to providing equitable access to recreational park facilities, and then financial accountability, ensure financial stewardship, leverage the potential of alternative funding. Every recommendation and key finding that we provided in the plan that's in front of you fall under one of these strategic areas. So as we talk about organizational efficiencies, and just to provide you an appetite in some of our key themes and what some of the recommendations may look like, you will see them here with that goal of pursuing organizational excellence. One of the recommendations would be to formalize existing joint use agreements with the school system, athletic groups, and any non-profit organizations, and increase the lines of operation, communication, but it also provides opportunity for growth in your partnerships externally for subsidy. Develop a review and departmental standard procedure annually. We're making some recommendations to grow this department moderately, and we want to ensure that we are offering programs and services that the community value. In doing that, you have to ensure that you have manuals, you have operations that are beneficial to ensure that these practices are cohesive. We're recommending 3 full-time positions be added over the next 10 years. One would be a maintenance staff, full-time. The second would be a program coordinator, and the third, a recreation manager. Again, these 3 full-time additions would be over the course of the next 10 years in whatever order would be beneficial to the department. Another recommendation would be to establish a Parks and Recreation Foundation Board. What we learned through a financial analysis is that alternative funding is something that could be beneficial to the county. And grant opportunities and fundraising efforts is something that typical departments wouldn't venture in. So having a foundation board could be an avenue for alternative funding for the enhancement of facilities, programs, and amenities. So our second strategic area was program and service delivery, and that goal was to enhance recreation opportunities for individuals of all ages. Just a few of the recommendations we have would be to create a part-time position dedicated to active adult programs, 55 plus. Through an Edgeread demographics report, we learned that 37% of the residents that live here in the county are 55 plus. What we also learned is that there is a very small amount of services for that population as it relates to parks and recreation, whether it's amenities, whether it's programs, or whether it's just opportunities to fellowship. So providing this opportunity and adding this staff could allow for some senior programs and services to take place. We've also recommended other program offers to include the enhancement of teen programs, health and wellness classes, and then family-oriented multi-generational programs and services. Third goal, facilities, parks, and service delivery. With that goal is commitment to prioritizing and providing equitable access to recreational park facilities. One of our recommendations would be to seek grant opportunities for neighborhood park development. What we learned through a level of service is that there is a lack of equity in the Southwest region and Northeast region of the county as it relates to playground and outdoor amenities. Something else that we learned is that there could be a benefit of completing a feasibility study for an outdoor athletic complex. It was something that was overwhelmingly relayed from members in the community, and also you fall below the threshold of rectangular and triangle fields in the county as well. Create a playground replacement plan to address infrastructure and park system, which would mean to not defer maintenance, but every couple of years replace a playground so that you don't have an influx of playgrounds to try to fund in the future. Be proactive rather than reactive. And then explore any opportunities in the future to enhance water access. People in the community desire it, and it's something that's really beneficial in this region of the state. And then last but not least, financial accountability, with that goal to enhance financial stewardship and leverage opportunities for alternative funding. explore additional sponsorship opportunities, and build on its successful programs. They're doing some great things currently with a very small team in youth sports and special events and other things that you may have seen on some of the slides and some of the photos in our book that you have. Let's build on the possibilities of providing more to the community, a growing community. Apply for grant opportunities at the state, federal, and regional level. Having an adopted Parks and Recreation Master Plan will qualify you for many grants through Virginia Recreation Park Society, and also for federal funding. Partner with county to develop standards for capital improvement. Through reviewing the financials from the annual budgets for the last 5 years, we learned that there has been a set capital improvement budget for the department. It's sort of been disseminated based on need and desire. What we're recommending is that they have a set amount in the near future so they can have opportunities to address some of the deferred maintenance and maybe add amenities that could be beneficial to the community. So something that we also provided as a part of this master plan is a current assets versus future needs. This is what you have now versus what you would need by 2035 based on increase in population, based on changes in diversity, cultures in the community, as well as some of the surrounding amenities in the region. So I won't go through this full list, but I would like to highlight that when you see the allotment for rectangular and diamond fields, at 7 and 8, we put part-time there because they're shared with the schools, which means Parks and Recreation doesn't have full access to those fields year-round. So when you see that number at 7 and 8, we're required to report accurately, but there is a need for rectangular and diamond fields here in the county. And then capital improvement recommendations. So what we provide are key findings and recommendations of what you could do annually to enhance parks and recreation in the county. We've learned, and through COVID primarily, that the health indicators for leisure spaces and autonomy of parks is something that's beneficial not only to mental health, but also to physical health. So just looking at the different capital improvement recommendations and opportunities within the county could be something that's beneficial. Starting in 2026 with that playground replacement plan that I mentioned a few slides back, and some possible outdoor amenities like pickleball courts and a neighborhood park in the northeast region of the county, as there's some geographical equity challenges there. And then several others, like looking at that outdoor athletic complex through a feasibility study, an outdoor splash pad possibly, and then a neighborhood park in southwest region of the county, which also has that geographical equity challenge. So, I'm sure that was quick. And I'm sure you have a lot to look over. Next steps would be to leave you with this document for the next 30 days with the possibility of adopting at the January meeting. Are there any questions?
Any questions, Mr. Ingram?
James, we appreciate you being here. Where are you from anyway?
So I like to say that I grew up in Richmond, but I'm from the Tidewater area. So
okay.
I live in Suffolk. I lived in Richmond as a teenager, but I've been there for maybe 40 years.
Well, coming here, I'm sure you see a lot of good things going on then, don't you?
I see a lot of great things going on.
The booklet is very well prepared. I look forward to reading it. So thank you guys for such a nice presentation. But it did sort of scare me for a minute because on the front, it showed some work in a tobacco field, and on page 15, it was the same picture. So are you promoting, as far as recreation, pulling tobacco could be part of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we create these booklets, we want to ensure that they're customized. We use photos that's provided to us from the county. So we need to use the photos that were
If you've never worked in a tobacco field, you've missed out.
I've missed out.
Anyway, thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thank you for
that.
having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. Any further comments or questions, Mr. James? Great, thank you, sir. Mr. Pry, any further comments on?
So
Yes, sir.
we're going to leave this with you guys for 30 days. If you have any questions, you read through it, please email us. We'll be glad to answer them. And if we have a consensus and you feel good about it, then we may look at adding this to the agenda to be approved on January. So, but certainly, please look through it. If you have any questions for us, we'll be glad to answer. If y'all have
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you,
Good
Mr.
job.
Price.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, moving to item 5C, we got a fire and rescue study presentation. Mr. Key? Yeah. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thank you.
That's right.
I'm here today with Dwayne Bonnet from ESCI. He's got a presentation on the fire and rescue study. Did y'all get the packet, the study itself? If not, I've got copies if you need them.
Let's see.
I got, like,
Yeah, we got a little
That's
small
not in the
packet here.
packet,
It's not in?
no.
Okay.
That was sent in just a regular email.
Okay.
That's not in the packet.
I think
I've
you
got 'em for y'all.
sent out an email.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I've got them for y'all, but he's here for the presentation.
Yeah, if you have a hard copy, that'd be good.
All right. Thank you, sir. Welcome, Mr. Bonnet.
Hello, how you doing? Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Afternoon. It's afternoon or evening?
It
Yes,
is
sir.
afternoon.
I get to pull it down. It's tough being 5'8" and a half. All right, let's see. You said push up or down? All right, so I'm gonna follow along. My notes are on this one, so if I'm going back and forth, I'm reading my screen here. So Dwayne Bonnet, I'm with a consultant with I'm consultant with ESCI, associate consultant. I don't actually work for the company, but they do these studies and they send us out as fire service professionals to do the work and put the report together. So, and they sent me here to present the report. So I'm gonna go through it. I got about 18 slides. You have the report. I guess they're gonna pass the report. At the end, if you want to go through that, we can, or if you want to read it later and send me some questions. If you have questions later, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's, There we go. All right, so as I said, I'm Dwayne Bonnet. David Gallagher, he's not here with me, but we were the team that came down. We're associate consultants with ESCI. Just a little bit about us. We both have over 30 plus years in the fire service experience before we both retired, and we both do consulting and other work. I did most of my time in Alexandria, Virginia, so up north, a little bit in Portsmouth, Virginia, and some time in Richmond. And I finished up in Prince George's County, Maryland, where I'm from the DC area. But I live in North Carolina now, so it was only an hour and a half to get here, so that wasn't bad. All right. But we both have executive level experience. That's not bragging, that's to say we've both had experience, even in our own departments, doing these kinds of things. You know, how do we improve our departments? Quick agenda. Do both. What we're going to do here, I'm going to go a little bit about ESCI, just so you know who we are, go over the scope of work, just so we have an understanding of what we were tasked to do. Kind of the information gathering is kind of the process. We'll go over the findings at a high level that we found, and I'll go over the recommendations that we found in the department. ESCI, they're a company, they've been around. The company ESC has been around since 1976 as a consulting company for the fire service. 2008, the International Association of Fire Chiefs purchased the company and added international, so now it's Emergency Services Consulting International. And in 2017, before 2017, they expanded into training and assessment. Before then, they did what we did for you all, mostly assessments and things like that, master plan, strategic plan. In 2017, they added promotional testing, assessments, things like that, fire chief recruitments and that kind of stuff. These are the areas that they're engaged in, the 4 areas: planning services, so we do strategic planning, master planning, risk assessments, community risk assessment, public safety, agency management assessment is kind of what we did for you there, and then also the recruiting, testing, and promotional processes. They administer the process. Okay, so the scope of work, I think it's important to go over what were we tasked to do. In a nutshell, it was to review the the fire service system here in the Pennsylvania County, and based on current conditions and current service performance, we looked at all the check marks. I won't read it all to you. Those are the things we looked at. Then we were tasked to develop and review a high-level report, which is what you have in front of you, and then today to deliver the report. In doing so, when you have a volunteer system, predominantly volunteer, all volunteer system really, other than the EMS agents that's doing the services, we did not look at each individual. We went to each individual station, so I'll explain that. but we didn't assess each station individually for how they're doing, what's going on. We talked to them, got information of what's going on, but we looked at the system as a whole. In Pittsylvania County, how are we doing with delivering our fire services and emergency services, EMS services, to the county residents and visitors? That was our approach. We did assess the public safety department because we're looking at it from the county point of view. That being a county department, we looked a little more in depth into them and how that was working. It's a snapshot in time, so it's not forever. Obviously, things change. Sounds like you're doing better with money. So even there, maybe you were able to make some changes, right? So what's happening tomorrow wasn't necessarily happening when we were here. The information gathering process, I'll go over that real quick. What we do is when we sign a contract, we know we're going to do the job. We start off getting information from you. What documents do you have? What memorandum of understandings do you have? What budget information can we get before we even come? We try and get as much as we can so we have some understanding of what's going on before we get here. Because obviously we're not going to be here for 2 weeks, so you want to have as much up front as you can. Then we come and do a site visit. So Dave and myself came and we were here, I think Monday through Thursday, about a week or so. Spent a week here, and in that week, we did station visits. We visited every volunteer fire department and every EMS agency and the public safety department. We met with the career staff, which is on the public safety department side, and we met with all the volunteer staff. I believe all their key members, fire chiefs or presidents, and any other people that they had, bring whoever. We talked to whoever they brought into the room. And that was hey, what's going on with your department, what's going on with the system. We want to get a view of everybody. We want to get a 360 view as much as possible to put together a report. We also met with other key stakeholders. We went to Danville Life Saving Group. We met with the sheriff, I think, 911, a couple of the board members. I know we met with some of the board members, some in person, some on video. So we try to talk to everybody and get everybody's input as to what's going on, what they think, about the system, what needs to happen. Oh, and go back one. And then when we leave, so we're only here for 4 or 5 days. When we leave, it's not over as far as the information. We don't just start rifling off a report and send it back. We spend time going back and forth with Director Key or whoever else, clarifying information. Maybe we got something, we didn't understand it fully or missed something. It gives us the time to get all that we have. We also review the report before we send it as a draft to say, hey, is this, did we miss something? Or we are way off base? We want to make sure we're in the ballpark of what's going on and not putting out something that doesn't make any sense. If you need to stop me at any time, you can. I'm just going to fly through. Okay, and then verify. Okay, so that's the scope of work and the process of how we got here. Anything on that? Or okay, good. All right. Figure it'd be easier. So the overview of what we found, I just broke them down into 3 categories just to make it easier to go through. I'm sorry. So strengths, we found some strengths in your system, as we would in any system. We found challenges, as we would in any system, and opportunities. All right? So we would do that in any system we go to. So let's go over the strengths. We found a good, strong foundation in place. What I mean by that is you have a system in place, you have the public safety department in place to support the system, you have the volunteers in place who are doing, what they can with what they have, right, doing their best to deliver the system. You have a good, strong foundation to work with. It's not a broke system, I don't know how to say that, right? And you have committed first responders. Everybody we talked to, we didn't talk to anybody who said, this, I don't like what I'm doing, this is no good. Or, everybody was committed. We're doing good. We want to do better. Whatever we can do to do better, we'll do it, but we're committed. Okay, it doesn't mean that they don't have challenges getting there, but everybody was committed, and that's important. Companies have a long history, as you do often in a lot of most of the country is volunteer firefighters, right? 80%, I want to say the number, of fire service in the country is volunteer firefighters. So they have a good long history, some family history, I'm sure, moms, dads, grandparents who were there before them, brothers, cousins, and so that's a good strong foundation. And talking to the county, the board members, the public safety department, and there was good county support for finding any long-term solutions to improvement. Everybody was on board with how do we make it better, and that was from the county, even from the volunteers. And I think when we did interact with a few citizens, it looks like you have good citizen support. They're still doing stews and people are coming, I guess. So that's a good thing, you know. That's right. All right, so, but with all systems we have challenges. So we do find some challenges. And I will say, they're not unique to Pittsylvania County. I did another job after this, another county in another state. And I was like, man, that's Pennsylvania County. Except you have a better foundation in place, I will tell you that. Same challenges, same things going on. Volunteerism down and recruiting new volunteers is okay. That's in the country. That's not just here. That's, you go across the country, having volunteers to do this job is just getting harder to do. People are busy for whatever reason. I won't go over all the reasons. So that's a challenge. We have to figure out if we have an all-volunteer fire system, and nobody wants to volunteer, that's a challenge. How do we overcome that? So, we did find fragmented system. What I mean by fragmented is they're operating, I want to say individually. So if I'm my department, you know, I operate and I'm doing the best I can, and maybe I'm going to have a training class, and we're getting better, but maybe a couple of volunteer departments over don't know about the class. And I'm just throwing out an example. So that's a little bit fragmented because it could, if you have a class and you could bring somebody over. We found some to try, and I think it's a challenge. It's a challenge for them to even have the class, and so to even offer it sometimes is a challenge. But we found those types of things that are fragmented. Your system is operating as a individual company. How do we respond to the calls approach versus how is the system responding to calls from them? And that takes a little more to get into. It's not that simple to say, but that takes a little more to get into. But that's where you want to get to. How do we operate as a system as a whole, not individual? Public Safety Department utilization. So they're in place, and they're doing a good job of being your central repository, of being the center of your system, keeping the system moving. But we did find there's some trepidation with the oversight piece of that, and just being in plain words, is the Public Safety Department going to tell the volunteer fire department what to do? And there's some trepidation there of, do we really need them? We're doing fine. We're doing what we're supposed to do. Do we necessarily need them? So that's just a challenge, something you have to work through. I'm going to say, yes, you need them. You need all of them. You need the Public Safety Department to be that centralized fire, but you need to work through whatever those challenges and feelings are that's causing that trepidation. Because today's fire service is a little more complicated, a lot more complicated, I'll say that, than it was. Okay. Cost to maintain the system. Again, this is not just because the cost of the fire service is just doing nothing but going up. A new fire truck today is $1 million engine, and a truck is almost $2 million, depending on what it is. That's a lot of money for one piece of equipment. And then if you get into personnel, you all know that. So I'm preaching to the choir there. So it's expensive. And so the cost to maintain, so the money you're providing to support them, things are going up, building maintenance costs and everything are going up. So you're helping, but with costs going up, maybe more than what you're giving them, they're struggling to make it through. And then the cost of you all having enough budget money to help them make it through. So that's just a challenge that is always. And ensuring regulatory compliance. So as I said to you, the fire service is getting more complicated as we do more with EMS and we're using more drugs. Those drugs are regulated by the DEA, so there's more regulations that go into how we store, care, use, administer, account for those drugs. And you have to do it, right? It's a regulatory compliance, more expensive. All right, so it's harder to do, but it also adds to the budget. Also, training-wise, the more you want to train, the more you want to do, there's more training requirements to maintaining those levels of training. So we can be sure that whatever you're going into, you're trained to do it. But there's more training with that, which is more cost. Okay. Keep moving. All right. So I went over the strengths, went over the recommendations. These are the opportunities that we see. I'll go back to the building on the foundation in place. So that's the opportunity. You're not starting from scratch on some of this. The fire stations and facilities are in the county already, right? So you have places to deliver the service from. You're not establishing that. You have a public safety department that can provide some centralized services and centralized administrative functions. That's important so that's addressing the fragmentation, right? I do my reports. Do I have it in on time? Do I not? Or did I do it at all? Those things. That's where the centralized administrative function, the county public safety department, can really help. Okay. And I want to be sure I got a countywide SOG. So real important, safety. They're safe. I'm not saying they're operating on stuff, but as things get more complicated with the responses, you want to be sure everybody's operating on the same page. So if we go to a house fire, you want to be sure that everybody going there is operating under the same playbook. We understand how we're going to put this out, who's doing what, who's qualified to do what. I'm not sure it's all more fragmentation, all right, of who would show up, how they respond. The unsafe thing there is if everybody there isn't trained or isn't trained to certain levels, and they may be asked to do something that they really can't do. If they're there, they're going to try to do it, and we just don't want to get anybody hurt. Okay, it doesn't mean that they're doing something. Well, it's not right. We don't want anybody going in there unsafe, but more fragmentation. And they're doing the best they can. Again, when you're operating with a volunteer system, we also have to understand the challenge is they're giving their time, right? So how much can we make them do? That becomes the challenge in that, okay? The centralized services, warehousing the information. So if we look at the county, and I'll go into this a little bit, when we tried to do some reports, our company, we tried to get some data to run information on reports. It's very fragmented, so to give you a real good, solid picture that we felt we could stand on was hard, of where are your calls, who's running what, those types of things. Are you meeting at ISO? We didn't even get into ISO requirements, which is Insurance Service Organization. It's another conversation, but to meet that, if you were trying to meet that, the information just wasn't good. It was fragmented. So that's where I say if we have the public safety department and we somehow can dump all that information and make sure we have one good repository of that data, that's when you're able to provide, a plan for, hey, this is where we need to go to get better, improve, and how we're going to get there. And the other findings, build on established relationship to both internal and external. So the opportunity, you have good relationships. We went to Danville, great relationship there. The departments themselves seem to have good relationships. We didn't find any, we don't like them, they don't like us kind of thing going on. So you have good relationships, and even with the public safety, there was some trepidation. I felt like you had some good relationships. So to build on that is good. You already have that. You just need to build on that. So internally and external would be like Danville and anybody else you run with. And then the other opportunity is for planning for short and long term. That's the opportunity in front of you. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the recommendations, so I'm going to move on through that. Any questions so far? Just keep moving. I only have 18 slides, so I'm on 12. All right. So these, I didn't do it with this, I'm sorry. These are the recommendations. We broke the recommendations rather down into these 4 areas. I won't read them to you, but we'll go through each of the recommendations in those areas. So the first thing, and if I implore upon you to do if you couldn't get anything, is do a strategic plan for how you want to get to where you want to be. You have to figure that out. So the question kind of was when we started this scope of work, where do we best put our money to support the system? Is it more volunteers, more public safety, over here, over there? Where is it best? It's hard to say if you don't have a plan that says where you want to be, where do you want to get to. That would be a better thing to have to drive your decision making for where the money should go, right? The money that we saw that you were giving, going back to even the county support, where you've increased the amount of support this FY than you did last FY, okay? And all good and all needed. Everything in there I saw was needed. But could you say that, was it because they just said, hey, I need, or was there a plan that's showing, and by doing this, we're going to get to X? I didn't see the plan that said that we're doing it because we're going to get to X. It was good money. I don't think you threw any money from what I could see. They need the money. Stuff is going up, so it's not wasted money. But is it getting you to a place that you want to be? And the strategic planning is important, and the way we do it, you can do it yourself, however you do it. But I like the way we involve the community, because even involving the community, what do they think? What do they want? And that should be part of that planning process, we think. And it's bit of a team building. So anyway, I'll go back to engage in a strategic planning process is one of the key things you could do. And one of the first things you do, and that'll help you all down the road for the next 5-10 years. Updating the policies, we went through them, they were fine, but I can go to probably any department in the country, they need to be updated. But making sure you have updated policies, and especially when you have, go back to the fragmentation, especially policies that cross volunteers. So if they're response policies, or we're going to have a policy that says that you have to have this level of training to do this, that should be the same, whether it's a public safety one, a fire department one, just have the same policy so everybody's on the same page. All right, so just updating the policy. The volunteers absolutely can have the internal policies of how they work, internally with their organization. They are their own organization. But when it starts to cross how we're going to work as a system, you want to update and make sure that they are up to date, current standards, and that everybody's on the same page. All right. Centralizing information, utilizing the county records management system. I said that before, so I won't beat it at home, but when we tried to get information, so this can become important. You're applying for grants. Everybody needs money, right? So if you're applying for grants, you need good information that says this is what we need. And each of the departments can apply, but I'm gonna tell you, when you apply for, especially these federal grants, you get more bang for your buck when that grant is gonna service cross a community. So if it's gonna be a resource that helps the whole county, gets a better score than a resource that helps maybe one individual fire department. So having good information and good records data to support whatever it is you're asking for is key for any of those grants. And it's not that you don't have the information, just fragment it. So just getting it so that everything dumps into this centralized. I believe it does to a degree, but when we looked at it and talked about it, it's not wholly. So that needs to be looked at to make sure that that's what's happening across the board. Okay. It also ensures that information ensures the actual reviewing data. So if you do any master planning or anything like that, and you want to see where stations are they in the right place? Do we need to move them? Anything like that? Good data is going to help tell you that. You want to overlap your county plan on that. If you're going to drop something in the north, some big battery plant or something that comes on top of that, and you don't have coverage, that helps you. And that good data will help you be able to decipher that. Okay. Organizational, did I do that? Okay, yep. I'm sorry, I'm double clicking, so I'm sorry. Here's where we are, my fault. Organizational structure and staffing, so establish or reaffirm the clear lines of authority with the Public Safety Department. Again, I'll go back to, I want to say this, we're not saying that the Public Safety Department should be able to tell the volunteer organizations or the EMS agencies what to do per se. But they need to have a clear line of authority if we need a report. If reports are supposed to be done in a certain amount of time, if there's some accounting of the county funds that you provided that you want, you need to be able to get that, and the county public safety department needs to be able to have some teeth, I guess, whatever, for lack of a better word, to get that information so that you have it. Doesn't mean that I'm not saying they should go and comb through their books. You all will have to decide what that information is, or they'll have to decide what that information is. But whatever it is that you task the public safety department to administer or be responsible for, they also need to have the authority to do it and have a clear line of authority so everybody knows what's on the same. This is what we want. This, I don't need that, but I need this. All right, whatever that is. And engage in a planning process to address immediate and future staffing shortage. Volunteer departments across the country, volunteering during the day is tough. Everybody's at work. Right? Everybody's a volunteer, they're at work, so they're not necessarily available to run that call during the day. So whatever you can do to plan for, hey, how do we address if we're not going to have volunteers during the day? Either can we recruit some more volunteers and there's some more available during the day, or do we need to do something with part-time folks, part-time career folks that work just day hours in some stations, just to be sure we have somebody that can respond to the calls. That's part of the planning process, and putting funding into recruiting more volunteers could help with that too. Recruitment efforts to recruit more volunteers could help with that too. The more volunteers, maybe the less career staffing you would need. But till then, and I should have started the recommendations. When we look at the recommendations, I look at when there's emotions and things, but when Mr. or Mrs. Jones in Pennsylvania County dials 911 and says, I need, How can we be sure that they get what they need as best they can, as quick as they can, right? That's kind of how we look at the recommendations. So how can we provide you recommendations that'll help you get here? I understood there was maybe some talk when we went around that we were going to say you need to be an all-career department. There's no way you can do that. But I mean, let's be real. We're not going to provide you with any unreal recommendations. You may be there one day, but not 2 days, right? That's expensive. Let's be honest. So that's why I go back to you have a good foundation to build. All right, I'm bringing it home. Funding allocation. Just double clicking. Funding allocation across county resources, sister partners. Again, I won't read these to you, but this is one of the key questions was where should we be putting our money? I go back to, so I put it up there again, use the results of the strategic planning process, deciding where you want to go, what your shortcomings are, then that'll help you decide where you want to put your money, how much here, how much there. That's going to be key. That was a question to us, but we found that difficult to answer without a plan, right? You're definitely providing support in the funding, providing the money that they get every month. That's definitely a help, for them operating. Definitely money towards apparatus and equipment and the things that you had provided in this FY is definitely a help. But towards a plan, you may do the same thing, or you may decide you want to move some things around. Recruitment programs, funding recruitment programs to getting more volunteers. Centralized purchasing, if you may be able to utilize the power of buying, if we need 2 engines, 3 engines, they're buying separately through their own system. If we were buying 2 or 3 through the county and through a bid process or established contract, we may be able to get those at lower prices. And even though you're not giving them enough money to buy the engine outright, wherever you can save, you can save. Right? So that's just an opportunity, something to look at. And implement a standardized financial accountability and reporting system. I shouldn't say implement because I believe you already have this, but in talking to everybody, when we went and talked in various talks, it's happening, but maybe not, there's some degrees of that happening, maybe not all the way where it should. Again, how far do you get into their business per se, and how much from a county perspective do you need to know and need accounting of? It's up to you all again, of course, but recommending, you just want to know if I'm giving you money to do X, is X happening? It's county money, that at least that. All right, so it wouldn't be a good presentation without some kind of picture. This is just to show you what the work is that's going on in the county as far as fire, rescue, and EMS, emergency services. And you'll see there that the tall blue line, 74% of the calls that are occurring in the county are emergency medical calls. And that just tells you that needs support. We need to make sure, and you are, but that needs to make sure that we are supported. That is to be, and if you add the motor vehicle accidents, which are technically EMS calls, that's another 12%. So you're almost at 86% of your calls are EMS calls. So we need to be sure whatever's going on in the EMS world that we're providing support, that may be strategic planning wise where we need to focus, and there may be some opportunities there with EMS billing even for the companies themselves on how we disperse our units. Now, the 8% fire, it's the lowest calls you go on, but that can be the most deadly, most destructive, most costly of the calls, right? One call. So I don't want to, just because it's there, we don't want to minimize that. That's not there to say that is unimportant. Okay, so don't want to leave you with that. Last recommendations was response performance improvements. Review the memberships, just so you have a sense of what's actually going on volunteer-wise, active membership-wise. There'll be a lot of folk, there'll be some number of folks in the volunteer agencies who are members, but they're not able to respond for whatever reason. They don't have the training. They might just be administrative meetings. So you just want to know what you have, what you're dealing with. That's all. That's not a knock. That's just a review. So we know if you got 100 people, but only 20 of them or 50 of them are able to respond. You just want to know that, so for planning. Response credits. We did find in talking to these folks that that's something you want to review. How currently, if you are in some percentage, you get money. So towards responses, so the trepidation on their part is I go to that's in my area. If I go to a call that's outside of my area and I miss a call in my area, then now I'm not going to get credit for that call. and I ran another call. We would say, if you're looking at it from a systems point of view, if I run a call in Pennsylvania County, I should get credit for it, whether it's in my first due area or not. So those are some of the system approaches. That speaks to some of the fragmented that we're talking about. You just want Mr. and Mrs. Jones to get that call, and they don't care who it comes from. And last, countywide response plans. These are things like snowstorms, if it's going to snow, if we're going to have a tornadoes coming through. Are we all on the same page with what we're going to do, or is each department doing their thing individually? And that is all I have. Any questions? Again, I guess you didn't. If you just had a report, it's no issue if you want to read through it later, and if you have some questions, if you wouldn't mind going through Director Key, I can answer questions later.
Thank you, sir. Good presentation. Any questions, gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman.
Comments? Yes, sir. Mr. Ingram.
Ms. Bonnet, thank you, sir. Appreciate your work in this. This is a study, and you offer up some suggestions and pretty good recommendations. I think it's fair to ask that when you do this type work for other localities, sometimes they accept everything, and sometimes they pick and choose what works best for them. So this technically is good, solid recommendations for what is best for us, what the best fit is for us. And I really liked the strengths that you highlighted, because we do have a great foundation. And those foundations, these 21 departments, is often the backbone of these communities. And I can speak for a lot of people when I say I'm very proud of that, because these volunteers have jobs, they have families, they have obligations, but yet they still come out and serve us. And so I often feel very inadequate that I can't do enough for them, because we have some absolutely wonderful, committed first responders, and you highlighted that, and I appreciate that. And as far as the county support, I think we need to do better, and I will work with this board to see what more we can do, because, listen, we all like stew, but you should never have to depend on a pot of stew to buy $1 million fire truck. And so I look forward to working with our departments and taking a deep dive into this and working with this board to see what we can do to make everything better for our citizens, because that's really what it's all about.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate, if I could speak to your comment, I appreciate that, and I should have said that we don't get so detailed, because once you take this information, now you're Pennsylvania County, you have to do what works best for you. I could tell you to do something, and that may not work. So we try to look at it at a high level and not dig down, and if we did some other study, we could, but that's
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram. Mr. Bowman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir. That was a very good presentation. So I have a few questions here, and they may be covered in your study, your review here. But when you were reviewing the recommendations, and I'm just going to go through these real quick, engage in a strategic planning process. So has this been done through your investigation here? Has Pennsylvania County ever done that? Have they ever engaged in a strategic planning process?
I can't speak to ever. To my finding, there was not one, and nobody spoke, especially not one, a collective one. Maybe individually they've done one in their departments, but a collective county one, I wasn't made aware of one if they were.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then update the public safety volunteer department's policies. So in the study here, in the investigation, when was the last time any of these policies were updated? Did you take a look at those policies?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. We didn't look at each individual fire volunteer department's policies. We didn't go that far.
Okay.
But even looking at the public safety departments, they're pretty up to date, because they have Director Keys, that he signed most of them, if not all.
Sure.
So they're fairly up to date, but it's always good, especially and that was addressing the fragmentation, is to review and update. You may not need to update. Some of them may be fine, but you may find that one is saying go left and another saying go right. We all need to be going straight. So if everybody makes sure that they review them and that they're up to date with current standards changed all the time. I don't remember the date on the policy,
That's fine.
to be honest.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And so another question here. So on the centralized information, utilizing the county records management system, is there a program that you can recommend to collect this information? is through your travels, other localities you've worked with, is there something out there that we can actually put in place to access that information?
Not one in particular. There's various models out there. They already have some. The thought there is just to make sure that however it happens, that the information gets to the county's county's standards. I don't know what all each individual do. They may have different systems, and I believe they did. They may not all have the exact same software that they're using. There's various software out there.
Okay.
But you may want, you do want that software to be able to talk to the county software if possible and dump their information in there. I can't speak to any one because there's various ones out there. They're good. You would have to see what works for you. Again, like cost-wise, those kinds of things. But if you're trying to put some information together, if you had to go to all 21 different departments, the 2 EMS agencies and the public safety, and try to put all that together, which is kind of what we had to do, that's tough.
Sure.
If we could have went to one spot, say this is the county.
That's right.
Then so I don't have one to say get this, and I probably
fine.
shouldn't do that.
That's what I'm trying to get my head around here is we have 21 departments there. Are they all 21 doing individual things, or should they all be working together for the common good? So that's kind of where I'm trying to get my head on this one.
In the end, they should. You just want that information, and they could speak. I don't want to talk. They may have software that's already doing that.
Okay.
That software costs money, so I didn't want to say that they all. I don't want to say that they all should go buy X software. And that's money, And
understand.
that may be what you find you can do, and you want to support that. What they have may work. It's just not being input into the county's, dumping into the county system. There may be some IT functions. Interfaces or things like that you could look at that could make that happen, and then you keep moving.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
And the last question I have here is, under the organizational structure and staff, and establish or reaffirm clear lines of authority and responsibilities with the public safety and volunteer. So in your travels and doing work with other localities, so are there any departments, I know they've had these same issues, that have put things in place to overcome these obstacles, these hurdles?
That varies. That's a great question, and it varies by, like I said, I went to another county similar to this one, and they don't have a public safety division. So the answer to that one is no. So now our recommendation with them is you need something in place that is a centralized service to help corral everything. I work for Prince George's County in Maryland, which is the largest, they say they are the largest combination system. They have career folks too, but it's got volunteer system, and that's fragmented into how some don't have any volunteers. They're open, but it's career folks in there. So they've addressed that by saying the fire chief is the systems chief. And so you do have to, so even if they're buying an apparatus, they have to go through the systems chief to get approved, because the way they look at it there is that right for the system? You might want it. I might want a ladder truck that has a bucket. All right, just call, I don't know if I'm, all right, but is that needed in your station? So that's the way they do it. But that does, again, back to the question here, but I don't know, that may or may not be right here.
Okay.
Exactly to be right here.
Okay, good.
Make
Thank
sense?
you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bowman. Any further comments or questions for Mr. Bonnet? Mr. Tucker?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your report. Your strategic plan that you had mentioned earlier that we should take a look at putting in place so that we start financially mirroring with the budget and what have you. Are there some pretty good financial plans out there that you could recommend, or do we just bring fire and rescue, public safety, everybody to the table and everybody throw something against the wall and see what sticks?
Well, I should say ESCI can come in and do that for you. What we do, and it's not really when I talk about strategic planning, it's not really aimed at the financial plan. What it is aimed at is where do we want to be as a fire service? What do we need? Where are we at? What are our gaps? Do we need more training? Do we need more stations? Do we need to do better at X, Y, Z, whatever that is? And then once you figure out, you might find that some of our recommendations are what would come out in a strategic plan. And then from that, then you say, okay, these are the things we want to do. Let's prioritize those things And then as we're making financial decisions every budget year, we know what our priorities are. And then so we can make some decisions that we may still support the way we're supporting, but we want to attack this piece of the plan and get this here, whatever that is. You know, I don't want to throw out an example because you would go through the plan. The way we do it, it brings everybody together. So again, the fragmentation, it brings everybody together. What's a little different here is we would do it just for a fire department, such as Danville up the road. We come in and do Danville's fire department. And what I would suggest here is yours is even a little higher than that. It's more of a community focused. So even I have a couple board members attend, citizens group attend, of course, all the fire and rescue departments, all they attend, and collectively decide where do we want to be. Because anybody could tell you, the fire guy, that we all want to do everything we can, but that may not be where we can be. That may not work financially. That may not be where the community wants us. So engaging in that plan gets everybody, it's more of a getting everybody on the same page with what we want to do, where we want to be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, where do we want to get to, and where do we need to be? Not even where do we want to be, where do we need to be? What are our gaps? And then from there, as you're making budgetary decisions every year, you would reference that plan. And you could make some long-term decisions, CIP decisions, whatever, off of that plan. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Sort of?
Yes, I mean, I understand the concept, but,
Okay.
you know, I guess in my mind right now, with our operating budget, you know, we're appropriating somewhere in the neighborhood of 32% toward public safety, which is the largest portion of the budget. So I agree we need some type of plan in place. But there again, once you put the plan in place, it's all going to come down to dollars and cents.
I would say that if you look at some of the recommendations, the good thing about putting the plan, some of the things you could do just by doing it. So some of the strategic plan would be if you went through if you took our recommendations, our policies all need to be reviewed and make sure they're all on the same page. You could do that today, and that would improve the system, right? So some of the things in here, you're right. There's somewhere you're going to get in here, we're going to be spending some money, so I don't disagree. But there are things in the plan you could do, and you may prioritize those things. You may say, well, to address the apparatus needs, we know we're going to have to enhance our CIP. We can't do it today, but in 2 years, we want to get that up to X. But meanwhile, we're going to knock out these 2, 3, 4 things that will get our system in a better place.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Any further comments, gentlemen? Mr. Barnett, thank you for the presentation. I think everybody here will agree the main thing we want is to save a life and put out a fire.
Yes.
That's our main end results. And any of the recommendations, I think that any policies, anything we need to look at, we probably need to come together, follow our protocol, go through the Fire and Rescue Commission, and then bring the recommendations back to this board. And we talk about it, and hopefully we can make it better for everybody.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
I think Fire and Rescue is actually working on a strategic plan of their own. Is
Okay.
that correct? Yes,
But yes. All right.
on the
Thank you,
commission.
sir. Any further comments from Mr. Barnett? Not?
Oh, by me, no.
No. Okay.
No.
All right. Thank
Fowler
you, sir.
didn't hit me on the knee, so I did pretty good. I'm going to get out of here while it's getting good.
Very good.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. We move into item 6A, our county CIP review and discussion. Ms. Vanderhyde.
Good afternoon again.
Good afternoon.
We are glad to be before you this afternoon to unveil a new capital improvements plan. This one is different than how we've normally done our capital improvements. And so I want to go over a little bit about where we came from. So if you were on the board, which you all approved the capital improvements plan last year, I believe you did that in January. It is a 5-year plan that is reviewed annually. So we send out to the departments their capital improvements from the prior year, and they review those, and then they update them for the coming fiscal year and then 4 years past that point. So we did that this year, but we did it a little bit differently. So if you're following along with your packet, it's your smaller packet of the two. It's the one that's got the 2 slides on the front. The other packet is a handout for you all to go through. It is actually the requests themselves so that you can see what was requested. So these new forms were sent out to department heads for them to submit back to us instead of just putting a number on a spreadsheet and updating that. And so the form is a little bit more detailed than we had in the past. We wanted to know what exactly they were asking for, if monies have been previously appropriated for that particular project, and then what will this project need as far as capital monies in the years coming, as well as any operating budget needs that will also be needed. We changed the threshold this year. If you will remember, back in May, you all updated the financial management policies to include our capital projects that we would include in our fixed assets list. We increased that threshold from $5,000 to $20,000 just because things are so much more expensive now, and we don't want to depreciate smaller items anymore. So that is why we felt like we don't want little small things, or, you know, if we're adding a car or something like that, that would be in the normal budget process. So that is why we settled on $100,000 as opposed to anything less. So we had these departments that actually gave us requests for this year. They were Public Works, which includes your Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, as well as your Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, Building and Grounds, Parks and Recreation, Elections, Public Safety, Library, and then our schools also turned in their capital projects as well. We had a total of 19 new projects, and then I will go over some that are still capital projects, but we have already started appropriating funds to those. So as you all know, and you have met Garrett, he comes to all of our meetings. We tasked him when he first came in the door in March with our fixed asset listing, and he reviewed everything that had been spent for the year, and he made sure that our capital assets had been added to that fixed asset listing when our auditors came in the door. And so as such, we felt like he would be the person that would need to do our capital improvements plan for this coming year. So he reached out to our departments. The departments sent back their forms to him, and he was the one that engaged with them if we needed more information. And so I am going to turn things over to him. He's going to go at a very high level on the capital projects that were requested, but as far as more detail, I would like for you all to review that. What we would like to do is for you to have this 30-day period for you all to look over that. And then possibly in January, we would like for that to be approved at your next board meeting. And if we felt like we needed to have a meeting for you all to discuss priorities, then we could have a finance meeting after the beginning of the year so we would know who our finance committee people are. So I'm going to turn it over to Garrett, and he's going to start with the next few slides.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. So the first one we have is our building and grounds. This year they requested for the courthouse HVAC system for FY 2026. That would be a $2 million. The human services building roof needs to be replaced for FY 2026. That's $250,000. The Cherry Stone Dam 1 and 2 for FY 2026, you're looking at $3 million, and 27 $3 million as well. Jail construction is FY 2026.
Mr. Chairman, right here I am.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bowles.
Just one question, Garrett, just for clarification, you have not prioritized any of these CIP projects, right? Are you just reading them here? Is it up to us to prioritize in January?
Yes, sir. Yes, and
I see.
if you want to have
Kim
another
doing this.
meeting before the next meeting to talk about and prioritize what you all would like to prioritize as a main
So my
goals.
question then, you're not giving these to us as a prioritized list?
No, sir, I'm just giving you what was sent to me, that's requests from the department heads.
Excellent. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman.
The jail construction, FY 2026 is $4.5 million. And I did put in there that the total for that we have been given right now is $89.7 million. The impact to the total general fund for FY 2026 would be $9,750,000. We do have funding sources down at the bottom, and I will let y'all read those. Next, we have the solid waste. So for Cell A, Phase 3 construction, FY 2026 is $300,000, 27 is $2 million, and 28 is $700,000. Cell A and part of B closure for FY 2028 is $1,750,000. The new Java convenience site for FY 2026, $50,000, and for 27, $550,000. The new Motley convenience site, FY 2026 would be $550,000. And then a county recycling center, FY 2026, $100,000, and FY 2027, $550,000. The impact total to the enterprise fund for FY 2026 would be $1 million. Next, we have water and sewer. The R&L water extension, FY 2026 would be $1.1 million, and 27 would be $3,250,000. Then we have upgrades to the 29 North Booster Station, FY 2028, $300,000, and FY 29, $900,000. The Stony Mill Water Main Extension will be FY 2026 at $600,000 and 27 at $5.4 million. The impact total to the enterprise fund for water and sewer for FY 2026 would be $600,000. Next, we have Parks and Rec. Their main one was the local sports complex. FY 2028 would be $500,000, and in FY 2029 would be $3.2 million. And that is the total 3.2, and it could possibly go up. That's just the total right now. The rail trail resurfacing, FY 2028, $150,000, and that would be after, hopefully, we finish the rail trail itself, the bridge. Impact total to the general fund, FY 2026, would be $50,000. Reason being $50,000, I'll point out real fast, is as you can see, funding source, budget 26 through 28, $50,000 per year to cover that rail trail resurfacing. That would get us the $150,000. Next up is the elections. The voting poll pad updates for FY 2026 would be $130,000. The impacted total budget to the general fund for FY 2026 would be $130,000. Next, we have public safety. Public safety is looking to have a new ambulance every 2 years for FY 2026. It'd be $175,000. FY 2028 would be $450,000, and FY 2030 would be $475,000. A new computer-aided dispatch, also known as the CAD system, for FY 2026 would be $1,351,731. Then we'd have an upgrade to the 911 radio system for FY 2026. That'd be $1.9 million. The impact total to the general fund for FY 2026 would be $3,426,731. Next would be the library, the Chatham Library expansion, which would be FY 2026, $75,000. 27, $125,000, and 28, $200,000. They'd also like to open up a new library in the Dan River District. For FY 2026, it'd be $250,000, 27, $2,125,000, and 28, $2,125,000. The impact to the total general fund for FY 2026 would be $325,000. At this time, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Vanderhyde. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So the schools, they sent us their request, and they kind of followed the format from last year. I did request that they do take off the 1% sales tax projects, because we know how they're going to be funded, and you all have seen those in depth, and I
Yeah.
think you've thoroughly investigated those. So we wanted them to send us requests that would be aside from those. And I talked to Ms. Worley today. They have not had their budget meetings yet, so of course their board will be reviewing these as well. So we have slides that show Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, and if you'll remember from the past, Tier 1 is basically those imminent needs. Tier 2 is replacements that they need to make, and then Tier 3 is kind of their visionary. I will point out that on the visionary, they did put on there the $12.6 million that they came to you all last month and talked to you about the fields for the schools. I'm not going to go into any great detail on these. Most of these items they will include in their own budget, so it's not monies over and above what you all provide for them. But then those larger ticket items, they may have to come to you for funding because they don't have $4 million for classroom additions. And I am sure in those instances that they would seek any grants that they could find. They're very good at being good stewards of their money and trying to find ways to defray cost. So these are the school slides. Like I said, I won't go through all those. But moving on, I did speak to some of the prior commitments that you all have agreed to in this year that will continue into next year. The past office renovations, we have already appropriated those monies. So we have $368,000 to renovate that building over there. Any monies remaining from that would just remain in the Building and Grounds Improvements line in our Capital Projects Fund. The Ringo Rail Trail, which you got a very detailed update on last month, that total project cost, and I've rounded it just for simplicity, is $5.6 million. So a local share is going to be needed of $28,000 in the coming year because of the correction that VDM would have to make. They made that mathematical error. We are on the hook for 6% of the cost of that project. So that will bring us up to date. There is a shortfall based on the bridge repair. So right now, there is a shortfall of just shy of $600,000. And as Mr. Arnold discussed with you all last month, we are going to get VDM to review that, and they're probably going to come up with that money. But that's not 100% certain right now. So we have checked with granting agencies that could possibly help with that. If VDM were to come up with that money, we would be having to put in our local share, and that's $34,000 additional dollars. But at this point, we would not put that in a budget until we knew for sure what we're going to do with that. Our Moses Building windows and HVAC, they are under working on those as we speak. And so you all have already appropriated all the funds for that project at $1.5 million. And so those funds will roll over from year to year until that project is complete. Our River Street network, just to make sure that you all are aware, we will be needing to borrow those funds before calendar year end next year. So we will need those. And we have found out that we can borrow those funds from VRA, which is the Virginia Resources Authority, so we can go to them for funding, and they usually have much better interest rates because it is a pooled financing group. So, and really that $4.5 million is going to be about 4.2 because we used our last remaining ARPA funds to defray some of that cost. The comprehensive plan, we did put $100,250 in FY25's budget. And so as I heard last month, I know that will be a great priority for you all. And we've heard from the IDA who is willing to help with that. And so I'm sure we'll be putting more funds in this coming year for that. Voting equipment, we put $187.5 in last year's budget, and we'll need an additional $172.5 in the FY26 budget to buy all of the voting equipment needed. And then our bookmobile, we appropriated $100,000. Rhonda has secured some grants to help defray the cost of that, but there may be additional cost in FY26.
Okay.
So that's why you didn't see additional requests for those things, because they'd already been requested. So we didn't want to give you too much information or overwhelm you with things, but we do need to let you know these are your prior commitments, these are new requests, and then moving forward. And then I wanted to point out some potential large operating budget item needs, because we did get other requests and other forms that we didn't really necessarily consider as capital items, but I want you to be aware of those. So just bear in mind that we still have a facility space needs problem. We need space. We're estimating that that would be $2.1 million, and that would need to be financed. The sheriff's office has a great number of what I would call operating expenses that are very hefty. They need to replace their tasers. That's $740,000. Body-worn cameras at $80,000. Duty weapons at $121,651. SRO rifles at $31,530. So those items, I know they have a grant writer, and they will be seeking grants for some of these things. And so that's a potential that you all will see in the coming budget. Fire and rescue volunteer agencies, they have additional amounts that they've requested. So the ambulances, of course, we purchase 2 of those a year. So they've requested an additional $50,000 over what we're currently giving them. The fire apparatus, an additional $100,000. And then the fire training center, they're requesting $75,000 for that. And then a ladder truck for Chatham will need to be purchased in the next few years. So that's going to be at a total cost of $2 million. So the thought is to maybe budget money along to make sure that we have sufficient funds. So now that I have given you all these numbers, do you have any questions for either myself or Garrett? I know we went through that very quickly.
Question, Mr. Ingram?
Kim, thank you once again. Going through VRA, are there any specific restrictions when you go through them? And
Yes,
if so, what are they?
Usually it's utilities. So of course they've added broadband to that list. That used to not be something that they covered, but now they do.
Okay.
They also cover landfill. The last time we went through borrowing for the landfill, we went through the Virginia Resources Authority. They do have 2 borrowings a year. There's a spring and a fall sale. But the requirements to get a spring, we would have to get our application in by February, and then in the fall, the application's due in August.
Okay.
So, it's pretty stringent, and we've got to know kind of ahead of the game, and that's why this document is so very important. But like I said, all we're doing is providing you all with the information, and then you all need to decide what you think are priorities and what needs to go into our budget and what we have the funds to do. So with that, that's our overview. And please, please, please call me anytime you have questions. Call Garrett. He was the one, like I said, that talked to the department heads. And I can't speak highly enough about the departments that did give documents. When we came back to them, they were very open and receptive to getting us more information. So I want to thank them as well.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
If I
Mr.
could.
Bowman.
Kim, thank you. Under the sheriff, his request here, what was worked out for his patrol vehicles?
We are still working with Enterprise on that. We had a conversation with them yesterday. They are supposed to still get us a buyout figure. They're struggling with that a little bit. I don't know if Mr. Tucker wants to add any information, because he was in that meeting with us yesterday.
Okay.
And the sheriff as well.
Okay, so I would imagine that would have been a bullet in here if...
So we will plan on getting that taken care of before the end of FY25. So
Okay.
that should not affect us. We purchased 22 vehicles at that time with that lease. And so the plan that we thought would be the best method, when I checked with our financial advisors, she recommended that we go to the market. We go to a bank, we get a line of credit, and we would purchase those cars as opposed to leasing those cars.
Okay.
Because our sheriff uses his cars until there's no real useful life left in them. So it doesn't really work for us as far as turning cars back in and getting new cars.
Okay, good. And one follow-up here, on the bookmobile, do you have an estimate, or did they provide an estimate for a new vehicle? On
It's
what it
going to
costs?
be a total of $400,000 was the estimate that we were getting.
400,000,
Mhm.
okay. All right, and then the last one, the comprehensive plan, has there been an RFP put out?
Not yet.
So we don't know, we're just kind of shooting in the dark with the cost here?
Correct.
Okay, good,
Correct.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Any further questions for Ms. Vanderhyde? All right, that's it. Thank y'all.
Thank
Good report.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right, moving to item 6B, we got our Mass County zoning ordinance. Ms. Ragsdale. Welcome.
Good evening. So we came before you last month. There was a public hearing held for the potential adoption of the updated zoning ordinance. There were still some concerns and questions that the board had, so we decided to hold off on any votes until the January meeting. So staff is taking this opportunity to come back to you to go through a couple of the items that you all did have concerns with, so we can get some additional direction from you, so that we'll have everything ready to go before your January meeting. So on the slide, you can see one of the biggest concerns were with campgrounds that we heard at the last meeting. So staff went through and did a comparison of our current zoning ordinance regulations relating to campgrounds and then what the new ordinance is proposing. And so those are broken down on the screen for you. As you can see, there are not many changes. Lot sizes are staying the same, and that is actually the minimum lot size allowed by the Virginia State Code for campground permits through the Virginia Department of Health. So even if we allowed them to be reduced, the health department would never permit a campground with a lot size of less than 1,600 square feet and a minimum width of 25 feet. So that is the absolute bare minimum size that you can go. And that's in our current ordinance and it's in the new ordinance. The density is not changing. We currently allow 20 sites per acre. We will allow 20 sites per acre if the new ordinance is adopted. Off-site parking, we require 1 space per site. The same requirement is being proposed in the new ordinance. Setbacks actually become more standardized in the new ordinance. Right now, we have 35 feet from the edge of the right-of-way or 60 from the center line of the road, whichever is greater, and a side setback of 10% of the road frontage. So if you've got 500 feet of road frontage, you've got a 50-foot setback. If you've got 100 feet of road frontage, you've got a 10-foot setback. So property owners with larger pieces of property are actually being negatively impacted by this current setback. So we're standardizing that. It will be 25 feet from property lines in the new ordinance to make that a standard setback. Open spaces, right now we state that no more than 40% of the lot can be covered. That requirement is not stated in the new ordinance. There's just a requirement that no less than 5% of the gross area shall be reserved as a common open space or recreational space. Length of stay, that is actually one of the few things that are changing as opposed in our campground regulations. Right now, we do not regulate the length of stay. You can stay in the same spot for 10 years if you would like to. There's nothing that says that you have to move to another site. There's nothing that says that you can't stay there. And what we are seeing is that a lot of times these are becoming permanent residents instead of remaining transient uses like they are designed to be. So that is the one thing that is changing. In the new ordinance, you will have 365 nights per calendar year in one space, and then at day 365, you would have to move to that next. You could move over one space and stay another 365 days. So you don't have to leave the campground, you just have to be able to move space, and that just ensures that it remains a transient use. So as far as signage, right now we have requirements that each campground has a sign at its entrance. It has to designate the name of the campground, the owners, and the contact information for the owner or renting agent. We don't get that specific in the proposed regulations. It just states that they have to have a permanent sign at the entrance designated the name of the campground. As far as waste, currently that's regulated by the Pennsylvania County Code, which is Chapter 17, the Solid Waste Ordinance. And what that states is because this is considered a commercial use, they're not charged the $120 solid waste fee, so they are not supposed to be using the county collection sites. They should have a contract with an outside provider to come collect that waste, and they are currently responsible for putting a dumpster or something on the property that their residents can use. In the new ordinance, that is just baked, that requirement is just baked into the zoning ordinance, so we don't have to rely on the solid waste ordinance to enforce that. So it is the same requirement. That requirement is not changing. We are just adding that language to the zoning ordinance. As far as retail sales, currently, that is not a permitted use. That's not something that I enforce. That is not something that my staff goes out and goes to campgrounds and shuts that down, but we look at these as separate uses. It's not an accessory use to a campground. It cannot be an accessory use because in A1, retail sales are not permitted, not by right, not by special use permit. Again, we don't enforce that, but adding language to the proposed ordinance that they could have retail sales as long as they are limited to things that you would find in a campground that could serve the residents of that campground. So food, concessions, recreational supplies, personal care items, and other items that are clearly supportive of camping or that type of recreational use are permitted. So you could have a camp store, you could sell, merchandise that were promoting your campground. All of those things would be permitted. You could sell food, you could sell personal hygiene items, you could sell probably even alcohol if you would like to, in service to the residents in your campground. All those things would be permitted under the new ordinance where they're currently not. So before I move on from campgrounds, do you all have any additional questions, thoughts, concerns? So power station regulations. I will state that this was not currently, this is something that staff is bringing before you, not necessarily something that you all brought up last meeting, but it's been brought to our attention, so we wanted to take this opportunity to bring it to your attention. When this was not currently in our zoning ordinance. Right now, a power station, a private power station, is a by right use. You cannot require a special use permit. I do not have any additional regulations that further regulate it over any other by right use. There are minimum setback requirements they have to meet. There are minimum screening requirements they have to meet, but that's it. This was not added to the proposed ordinance. Given certain projects that have recently come to light, and staff is seeing that this is becoming a more prevalent thing that is being proposed with data center development and other type of development, just to overcome the lack of capacity on our existing transmission lines and our electrical grid. We thought that it was in the county's best interest to add regulations to the proposed ordinance. One thing that was overlooked is that the current proposed definition states that a power station is an industrial facility whose primary purpose is the generation of electric power for off-site consumption. So this would not apply to any power plant that was constructed providing on-site consumption. So say you built a power plant of any size, it could be nuclear, it could be natural gas, it could be anything that was generating power for consumption on site. that would not be regulated under our current ordinance. Now, if it was in association with a data center, our only way to regulate that would be through a special use permit for the data center. However, if you approved a special use permit for a data center, they came back later and added power generation, staff's concern is that there would be a loophole there when we would not have the ability to regulate them. So staff is proposing that we also add on-site consumption to the definition to close that loophole and allow us to require a special use permit for any type of power station, whether that's public or private, on-site consumption or off-site consumption. And that's because power generation does have the potential to have a lot of adverse effects on the area around it and the county as a whole. You've got noise, you've got lighting, you've got a lot of other things that can be very specific to that use that the special use permit would allow you to place conditions on and further regulate. Additionally, because our current definition excludes on-site power consumption, this, I handed out, it's 6.6 power generation, 7-6-6 power station regulations, which are performance standards that are in the proposed ordinance. Because that definition does not state on-site consumption, these would not apply because it would not meet the definition of a power station. Staff would like to be able to impose these regulations on all power stations, whether it's on-site or off-site consumption. And this is going to cover things like environmental impacts, making sure that they've done studies to address environmental concerns, signage, design, siting, inspection, security fencing, coordination with local public safety services, construction schedules, so that we can ensure that construction the impact of construction is minimalized as much as possible during that time. Pre-application meetings, it requires neighborhood meetings so the public is aware of the project and can voice any concerns and have those concerns addressed if possible. It also takes into account decommissioning, which right now would not be required. So if a property fails to produce power, they have to decommission it. We're not left with an eyesore that's falling down that the county has no ability to step in and do anything about. We would hold a decommissioning bond. If they fail to decommission the project, the county could draw from that bond and we could decommission the project ourselves. So again, staff is proposing that we do add that on-site consumption language to the definition.
Ms. Ragsdale, question. Would that affect a digester like a dairy farmer would use that uses methane gas to generate power? Because that is a possibility. But I didn't know if it being dairy agriculture, would it be exempt or not?
I can look into that,
Okay.
and we can make sure that we have some protections in there that would not be impacted. Our main concern, and this is natural gas, like non-renewable energy. So I feel like that's going to fall under more of a renewable energy category, not necessarily non-renewable, but I will make sure before we put anything into place.
It's something out there like that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
Does the board have any other questions relating to this?
No, ma'am.
I don't.
Any more questions, gentlemen?
I think I'm good.
Mr. Tucker, you good?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bowman.
Emily, this is great, and this was what was missing out of there, and I especially like the decommissioning piece that you have in here. One question, when the applicant, when a developer comes in, and what you have listed in here, do these applications have to have all of these included when they're submitted to your office? For instance, a site plan that's in there, a traffic study, all of that has to be complete and part of that packet.
Yes, and all of that is included. So in the performance use standards that you all have in front of you, there is, let me find it, pre-application requirements. They have to submit a project narrative. They have to have a neighborhood meeting. They have to have a pre-application meeting with staff. They have a site development plan, construction schedule, community impact assessment, environmental impact assessment, traffic study, grading plan, landscaping plan, and decommissioning plan. So all of those things would have to be submitted to my office, and then we would have the appropriate staff or agencies step in to help us review those and give their blessing before we allowed anything to move forward through the special use permit process.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Any further comments or questions?
Okay, so just some next steps. Anything that comes out of either tonight's meeting or you go home and you have any concerns or questions, or you'd like for us to take a look at something else, staff is going to work with the Berkeley group to make any changes that the board wishes to be made. The public hearing will be advertised in the Star Tribune on January 1st and January 8th. So all of those changes have to be baked into the draft document prior to January 1st, because at that time we also have to make it available to the public to review. After it's been properly advertised, there will be a public hearing for possible adoption at your January 21st business meeting. So as long as that's still the schedule that the board would like for it to continue on, those will be your dates.
Very good. Thank you, Emily.
Do you all have any questions or directions that you would like for us to go?
Is it the board's pleasure to add this to the zoning or talk about it more?
I've got a quick question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Height.
On the section 766, this will apply to applications made after adoption, right? Anything in the pipeline now, this doesn't apply.
Correct.
I want to make sure everybody understands that.
That's right.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Height.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I think we should move forward with the date set forth by our staff and Ms. Ragsdale.
Okay. So we're going to need to add this to our zoning ordinance to have it published in the paper on January 8th. Mr. Evans, do we need to make a motion to add this, or can we just do
I don't think a motion is needed.
Okay. So our directions are to let Ms. Ragsdale add it to the ordinance.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Go get them.
All right, moving to item 7. Are there any business meeting discussions, gentlemen? Mr. Evans, do we have anything?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, moving to item 8.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
The only thing I foresee that's going to be added, and Mr. Bowman can speak to this, is an appointment for the Planning Commission for his district.
Yes.
He did get those applications in, and I think he's decided on somebody, so we'll add that at the business
Okay,
meeting.
that'll be good. All right, thank you. All right, moving to item 8, our closed session. Mr. Evans, would you read us in the closed session, sir?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 3 matters appropriate for the convening of the closed session. First, a discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of special public officers, appointees or employees of any public body, legal authority, Virginia Code, Section 2.2-3711A1, subject matter, county administrator, purpose, review, and discussion of related next steps. Second, the consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. Legal authority, Virginia Code, Section 2.2-3711A8. The subject matter, Balico LLC rezoning application, and the purpose, consultation with legal counsel, legal advice, and discussion regarding the same. And last, discussion concerning a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the businesses or industry's interest in locating or expanding into facilities in the community. Legal authority, Virginia Code, Section 2.2-3711A5. Subject matter, unannounced prospective businesses and industries. Purpose, general economic development projects update, and discussion of the same. Mr. Chairman, it would now be appropriate for a motion, discussion, and vote regarding closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Tucker, a second. Second by Mr. Dudley. Any further discussion? None. We're ready to vote.
It passed unanimously.
All right. Thank you. All right, gentlemen. Ready to go into closed session. Mr. Evans, can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you, sir.
Go ahead and read us back into open session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As to the certification of the closed session for the Board of Supervisors work session, be it resolved that the Pittsylvania County Board of Supervisors work session on December 17th, 2024, the board hereby certifies by a recorded vote that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion authorizing the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. If any board member believes that there was a departure from the requirements of the Act, he shall so state prior to the vote, indicating the substance of the departure. That statement shall be recorded in the board's minutes. I'll now do a roll call vote. Mr. Bowman?
Mr. Bowman?
Mr. Bowman?
Yes.
Mr. Dudley?
Yes.
Mr. Height?
Yes.
Mr. Ingram?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Mr. Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Dalton?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Evans.